Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. Okay, yeah. So indent when you start a new block of code. It will do that automatically. You usually don't have to do it yourself. For any new IDEs, I should write this down too. This isn't a convention, but an IDE is short for integrated development environment. Those are basically just tools that you use to code. Like for Java, there's like NetBeans or IntelliJ. For Python, there's like PyCharm, and Roblox Studio is also sort of an IDE. IDEs just provide this like space for you to code and compile and test that code. So usually newer IDEs will indent for you, and you don't have to worry about that. Uh, Apart from indenting, we use spaces as well to separate different operations. So here I have a variable called x, and it's set it equal to 5 plus 3. Um, I have a space between each character here. You don't want to do something like 5 plus 3 where you have no spaces between the 5 and the plus sign, or the 3 and the plus sign, because then it becomes a little bit harder to read. So always add spaces to operations. Okay. So those are conventions. Any questions on that? Okay. Next, I want to just make a small comment on the flow of logic in these scripts. Um, the computer reads code from top to bottom. Always reads it from top to bottom. So sometimes what I've seen new coders do is they try to they try to use a variable that they define after the uh, the function that they create. Here, I'll try to show you guys. So very simple. I just have two lines of code here. I have a print function with x, and then I have a variable called x that's equal to the string hello. When you mouse over the x in this print function, it says unknown global x, which means that the computer, the compiler here, doesn't know what x is. And if we run this, should get an error. Oh, it says nil. That's actually the same thing. Nil means that there's nothing assigned to this variable x. And the reason because of that is because when the computer reads this script, when you have the statement print x, it doesn't know what x is because it hasn't read that line yet. It hasn't really analyzed that line yet. It only knows what x is after that print statement. So if we move local x equals hello above the print, then there's no error. because the computer knows what x is before it has to call x, before it has to use x. So if we run now we see the word hello in the output. So a lot of times new coders will try to define variables after the point at which they want to use them, and it'll give them weird errors. Not they haven't really done anything wrong except for misplacing stuff in the flow of logic. So be conscious of that. While we're here, this is also called a instance variable. When you write a script, you typically want to include what we call instance fields or instance variables at the very start of your script. These are variables that are used in functions that are created afterwards. And they're also not included in these are variables that are not included in, like, not confined to a specific function, and they're also not confined to a specific object. That's a little more advanced. Any questions on the flow of logic? Okay. So now we're going to get to the chunk of this lesson which is called operators. Oh, okay. Correct. Yes. 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 It's local to the script, right? Not a specific function, not an object, nothing else, just the script. I kind of think of it as like the variables that are outside everything. It's like the stuff you create outside to bring it inside certain parts of your code. Okay. So now we'll go to operators. So you guys have seen operators before. I should probably just do block comments. I don't know what I'm doing here. Sorry. Sorry, I had to go AFK for a second. There we go. This is a block comment, by the way. So the three types of, actually there's four types that we're going to go over. The four types of operators that we use are called arithmetic, relational, logical, and compound. Arithmetic operators you guys have seen before in math class. For example, addition is a math operator, or an arithmetic operator. Multiplication is subtraction, stuff like that. So operators relate to specific symbols that languages use to carry out those operations. We're going to go over compound. So the addition symbol is just the addition symbol. Subtraction is the minus symbol. Multiplication is the star on your 8 key, or I don't have a numpad on my keyboard. Yeah, asterisk. Okay. And division is the slash key, slash symbol. So an example of this, we have already seen it actually. Um, X is equal to 5 plus 3. That's an example of an addition operator being used to carry out addition. So arithmetic operators are pretty simple. You guys should have seen them before. Are there any questions on them? Yep, just a calculator. All right. Nope, you can add up the values. I think I usually like talking about like PEMDAS or like. So yes, if you remember the data types last lesson, you can add any integers together. So if you have a number that was like, if you have a number under the variable like currency or XP, you can still add XP to currency, even though they have different meaning in the code, because you gave the different meaning to the variable names. They can still be added together. It doesn't matter because they're both integers. And also, we're going to talk about that a little bit after the operators. There's a little detail that y'all need to understand. So relational operators are these. All right, greater than, less than, or greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. There's also equal to. It's just called equal to, by the way. It's not just equal to. Yeah, well, the computer has to know if you want to make an assignment or if you want to compare things. So if you're going to do this, um, if I have two variables, x and y, and one is equal to 5, one is equal to 6, if I did x is equal to y, what this would do is set x equal to y. So x would equal 6 after this. It wouldn't compare the two. But if I did x equals y, then it compares x to y and says, oh, these aren't equal to each other. So the reason we have the double equal sign is to differentiate between assignment and comparison. Any questions on these? Sorry, so if I have, you're saying if the two aren't equal, it errors? Is that what you're asking? No. So if we're to do this, actually, if we were to do this as it is would error out, the computer doesn't really know how to handle this. But if we were to do something like print x equals y, it's not going to error. It actually prints something. Prints false. It actually, the relational operators relate to the Boolean data type. So when it evaluates x equal to y, well, x is equal to 5 and y is equal to 6, so that's not true. It'll print out false, a Boolean. If x is equal to 5 and y is equal to 5, now it should print true, and it does. Yep. We use, yeah, we would typically use, you don't have to use relational operators in an if statement, because sometimes people will do this. Wait, hold on. If x equals y, then print true. So I have an if statement here. If x is equal to y, then we print true. However, you just saw that we did the same thing basically without an if statement. We can do the same thing by doing print x is equal to print is x equal to y. So there's a little bit of a shorthand, like there's a shortcut here that you can use instead of using if statements. Don't worry about that right now because we haven't gone over if statements. Next we have logical operators, which are and, or, and not. In other languages, it might be this. So in Java, for example, and also C languages, the and symbol is these two and symbols. I forget what these are called. Ampersand, good. And the or are these two vertical lines here. And not is the exclamation point. But in Roblox, it's a lot more simple. It's just the words and, or, and not. So we use logical operators in statements to compare two conditionals. It's like if we have the same things, local x is equal to 5. I'm not talking, I'm just writing. So here, the if statement's a little more complicated because we're checking to see if x is equal to 5 and if y is equal to 6. And if both statements are true, if both expressions are true, then we print true. If one of these is false, so for example, if we do y is equal to 7, we know y is equal to 6, not 7, so this is false right here. This expression here, y is equal to 7. Why is y equal to 7? Oh, right. So this wouldn't print because this statement is false. So when you use the and keyword, the and operator, you have to the statement will only execute if all the expressions in the condition here evaluate to true. If we did or, so if x is equal to 5 or y is equal to 7, then only one of these expressions has to be true. So since x is equal to 5, this expression is true. So even though y isn't equal to 7, this statement would still print true because one of those expressions is true. If we were to use the not operator, so x is equal to 5, not 6. If we didn't include the not operator, then it would be if x is equal to 6, then print true. That's false because x is not equal to 6. But since we included the not there, that means that we're looking for the opposite of that evaluation. So if not x is equal to 6, then print true. This statement is true because x is not equal to 6. This is probably the most confusing part of these logical operators. Yeah, are there any questions about that one? Yes. It flips the evaluation. Uh, so I actually use not a lot. Typically, for example, if you're searching through the workspace and you're trying to here actually let's do this. Say we have a bunch of parts in here. I'll only do a couple, doesn't matter. Let's do, what should we do here? So say we're looking at workspace and we want to change the color of all these parts in here. But we also have a tool in the workspace that's named part, but it's not a part, it's a tool. In that case, we wouldn't want to include the tool in what we're doing. We just want to have the parts here. So you would say if not a tool, if the element here is not a tool and the name is part, then we do stuff to it. So it's useful for differentiating between different types of objects in the Explorer. But you can also use it pretty much for any other thing too. Like you'll find yourself using it in a bunch of different things. Lastly, we have compound operators. These aren't too difficult to grasp either. The hardest part is probably the logical operators. The compound operators include plus equals. Actually, we'll do plus equals, plus plus, minus equals, minus minus, multiply equals, divide equals. Oh, there is one more. Shit, we'll do that after. I forgot one operator. So, what these compound operators do, they're similar to the arithmetic operators, except they do something a little bit different. I'm going to demonstrate that now. These are the easiest things to see and grasp. Oh, I'm on a brain fart. Oh, yeah, yeah. Wait, are you here? Rambo? Oh, okay, he's in the no mic frequency. Okay, good. Oh, actually, it's not included in Lua. So, that's interesting. That sucks too. So the plus plus and the minus minus operators aren't actually included in Lua, but it's in like every other language. Um, Basically, what the plus plus operator do is it adds 1 to the current value. So if we did x plus plus, x would equal 6 instead of 5. And if you did minus minus, then x would equal 4. So you're adding 1 and subtracting 1. Because otherwise you'd have to do like x is equal to x plus 1, which is a little longer than just doing x plus plus. But Lua doesn't have the plus plus operator, which is stupid. But it does have the plus equals operator. So what plus equals does is it adds a new value to the existing one. So if we did if we did x plus equals 2, it would add 2 to the value that's already in x, so x would equal 7. If you did minus equals, then x would you would subtract 2 from the current value of x, so x would be 3. And it's the same thing for multiply equals and divide equals. What you're doing is you're performing those operations to the existing value in the variable. You can look at it like this. The first operator is the operation you want to perform, and then you're assigning it with the equal sign to the variable x. So just to prove this, x should equal 7, and it does. Any questions on compound operators? Now keep in mind you can also switch it. You can do, instead of doing x plus equals 2, you could do x equals plus 2. Now Lua doesn't let you do this, but in other programming languages you definitely can. I've had it on like a bunch of tests, and this just like reverses the it messes with the flow of logic here. But you really don't have to worry about that when you're scripting. Okay, and one more arithmetic operator that I forgot. I don't really use it in my coding, but it's definitely used quite a lot, is the mod operator. Which is the percent sign. Actually, hold on, let me double check that as the percent sign for Lua. Mod is short for modulus, by the way. It's the remainder of a division. So if you did like local x is equal to, let's say, 5. I should do an even number. All right, so you don't even need the variable. Let's do 6 mod 2 gives us 0. So the reason for this, if you divide 6 by 2, then you get 3 with no remainder. That's why you got 0. The modulus is the remainder of the operation. But if you did 7 divided by 2 should get 1. And you get 1. Because 7 divided by 2 has a remainder of 1. You guys understand that?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Aha. Let me look up one. Now I have to admit, I really don't use the mod operator when I'm coding. I just don't have to. Oh yeah, this is one case. You use the mod operator a lot when you're trying to determine if certain numbers are odd or even, because if I go back to this expression 6 mod 2, because the remainder is 0, then I understand that 6 here is an even number. Because when you divide an even number by 2, you always get a remainder of 0. But if it's 7, I get a remainder of 1, so I know that 7's an odd number. So mod's good for determining odds or evens. Um, I'm just looking through like a list of stuff. Nah, you don't really need anything else here. Just know that it exists.
Yeah. A yes or no answer is fine for this one. You don't have to get into it. But since you used it that way, is there a way to make Roblox Studio register a 0 and a 1 output as true or false without obviously inquiring whether the value is 0 and then setting another variable to true or false? Is there a way to just make it read 0 and 1 as true or false?
Um, I've never used it like that. I'm gonna say no. I do know what you're saying though, because like in like languages like C or C++, for example, there is no true or false keywords. It's just 1 or 0. But I've never had to do that in Lua. I usually just always use true or false.
Okay. Because that would make the odd or even function that you just showed a lot simpler. Because then you could uh, take the mod of 2 and get a direct true or false output.
Yeah, 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 yeah. True. But it didn't print true or false. It printed the remainder as like an integer.
Yeah.
So I'm inclined to think that it just doesn't recognize 0, 1 as booleans. So those are the operators. Uh, we're going to use them in some if statements, and then that'll be the end of this lesson. Are there any questions on the operators before I go on?
No, I don't believe so.
Let me look at chat. Nope. Okay. Okay. Conditional statements. So conditional statements refer to basically if statements, which you've seen in this lesson as I try to explain some of the operators. So this is an if statement. By the way, when I was explaining indenting and blocks of code, if you're confused on what a block of code looks like, just look for the word end. Wherever there's the word end, it means that it's ending a block of code, a specific statement or function. So here we have a basic if statement, if true, then end. This true here is what we call the condition. So we have the if keyword, and then we have the condition, and then we have the word then. And then anything in this statement is what we want to execute if the condition is true. So if we do what we did before, if x is equal to 5, then we print this worked. So because x is equal to 5, then this condition here is true, and so the statement's true, and we can print this worked. So if we test this out, you see in the output the words this worked. However, if we said if x is equal to 6, then nothing's printed out. The reason being that x is equal to 5, not 6. So this condition is false. If since that's false, then this print statement is never executed, it's never printed. Now, let's say we wanted to make this statement a little more robust, and we wanted to do something if the condition is not true. Then we use the word else. So in this case, if x is equal to 6, then we print x is equal to 6. Otherwise, or else, we print x is not 6. So if we do this, if we test this out, then we see x is not 6. Any confusion around this statement? Okay. So let's say we have, because we have two cases here, right? We only have two cases. We have one case if x is equal to 6, and then if x is not equal to 6. Let's say if we wanted to add more conditions. Let's say if we wanted to do if x is equal to 7 or 8. Then what we do is we use what's called an else if statement, or in this case actually, let me see, hold on. Yeah, there we go. We use an else if statement. So then we could do x is equal to 7. Okay. So now we have specific things that happen when x is equal to 7 or 8. So we've added more conditions here. So if you were to set x is equal to 7, then it should print x is equal to 7. So it says x is 7. There you go. Now, when we look at this, this is the else if statement is more efficient than just writing multiple if statements. So if we didn't want to use the else if statement, we could also do like, I can just copy and paste here. So this is the same thing, except we have multiple if statements. So here we have if x is equal to 6, then print x is equal to 6, x is equal to 6, or if x is equal to 7, then print x is equal to 7, etc. The difference between having multiple if statements and one else if block of code is that when the computer runs through this else if statement here, this block of code, it stops once it reaches the true condition. So if we didn't have this, cut that out, x is equal to 7, what the compiler would do, what the computer will do, is it'll read this statement here, if x is equal to 6, then print x is 6. It'll read this condition here, it'll say, oh, x is not equal to 6, it's equal to 7. So it continues, if x is equal to 7, then print x is 7. This is true, so it would print. However, it doesn't stop there, it keeps on going, and it evaluates this if statement as well, even though we've already reached the true statement. But if we have the else if statement and then go through the same logic, it'll go through this x is equal to 6 condition, and then it'll go to the x is equal to 7. It'll see that this condition is true, and then it'll stop there. It won't continue down to 8 or anything else. So it's a little bit more efficient than just having multiple if statements. You don't have to read as much and consider as you don't have to evaluate as much. So is that confusing? Do you guys understand that?
Makes sense. Makes sense, yeah.
Okay. So that's the if statement and the else if statement. There's also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
What would happen if you put two else's?
So you can't put two else's. Just wouldn't make sense. See, I just indents for some reason, but there's an error here. You can see there's an error because of the red line.
Okay.
Just wouldn't make sense because else includes every single other condition that isn't included in the statements above. So if you try to think, how could you have two else statements? It just wouldn't make sense. Because like all the conditions are already included in the one else statement.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. There's also something called a switch statement, uh, but Roblox doesn't have it, so we're not going to go over it. Uh, Anything else here? Did I miss anything here? I don't think so. No, those are the conditional statements. And also, you can see that we're using the operators we covered previously in the conditional expressions of these statements. So you can use you know if x is greater than y, or if x is greater than or equal to y, or it can just do like a regular number. Is x greater than or equal to 5? And you can use if x is greater than 5, or if x is greater than 5 or x is less than 7, then we print this stuff. So you use the operators in these statements to try and do things. All right. Any questions on anything we've covered? That's the last topic. No questions? Okay.
On this, I do have a question that I would like after this lesson, if you could help me with.
Okay. All right. We'll stop there, and you can ask your question.